All right, so yesterday I did a video on Ivan Provorov based on him being left off my list and explaining why. So now I'm going to defend why Andrei Vasilevskiy, in my eyes, is the best goaltender in the NHL. And in a way that I don't have time to do in a list video, because I don't have time to do up 16 different boards with 16 different goaltenders. No, that is not the way to do that. Now, I've thought about doing actual countdowns that way before, where I would say, all right, here's the top 20 of this, and I'll do a different one each day and go from 20 through to 1. But it's a lot of videos, and I'm not sure how well that would perform. And so Vasilevskiy, who is now 26 years of age, in my eyes, is the best goaltender in the league. And where, to me, it became not really debatable is during the playoffs and the return. Because you look at the 4 teams they beat, you look at the goaltending that those 4 teams had throughout the playoffs, Vasilevskiy outplayed those goaltenders. And he did. And I know in the Columbus series, Korpisalo became a folk hero for what he did in that 5 overtime game. But Korpisalo was no slouch in that game himself. So he's the number 19 pick back in 2012. And he is a risk-reward pick, right? Because goaltenders, that's what you're getting. You're getting a large risk, because taking a first-round pick and spending it on a goaltender, there's that risk he's not going to make it. And it seems to be higher with goaltenders than for other positional players. And I'll do a video on that at some point where I look at how many first-round goaltenders have maybe flamed out, how many of them have been excellent, and I'll counter that with the late-round pickup goaltenders and the mid-round goaltenders. And we'll see what kind of value there is in that. But for Tampa, Vasilevskiy, absolutely one of the best players out of that draft. 6'3", 216 pounds. He is your prototypical goaltender of this modern age. They're big, they are very agile, and they're just smart. And Vasilevskiy's a very smart goaltender. He would not make his debut in the NHL until 2014. 2014-2015 season, played 16 games, 7-5-1 record, .918 save percentage. Tampa brought him along relatively slowly because I think they understood this was the future and they didn't want to wreck it. In the playoffs, he played 4 games, had a 1-1 record with an .895 save percentage. So the overall numbers, pretty good for a kid coming into the league. 2015-2016, plays 24 games as the backup, 11-10 record with a .910 save percentage. In the playoffs, he would play 8 games. He ended up 3-4 with a .925 save percentage. And a lot of pressure on him when he came in 2016 as well. So, honestly, for the Tampa Bay Lightning, things looking pretty solid. And so they decide going into the 2016-2017 season, Vasilevskiy's going to be the starter. And at the time, I saw some risk in that. Because while his numbers were solid during the playoffs, regular season, average, not bad, pretty good. And this is, of course, before I'm watching as much hockey as I do now. So this is a lot of it just me looking at numbers, looking at overall charts and all this, and going, he's good. But in his first year as a starter, it's a rough year for Tampa. They missed the playoffs that year. 2016-2017, plays 50 games, 23-17-7 record with a .917 save percentage. So his numbers are good. The numbers for Tampa, honestly, they were right on the verge of making the playoffs. They missed Stamkos that year. It was a huge problem for them. But it did allow Braden Point to emerge as a really solid option for them as well. So this was a team that was in flux and they missed the playoffs, but it may have benefited them. 2017-2018, he plays 65 games, 44 wins, which leads the league, pretty close to that 48 mark, which is the record. 17 losses, 3 overtime or shootout losses, .920 save percentage. So overall, really solid numbers for Vasilevskiy. In the playoffs, 17 games, 11-6 record with a .918 save percentage. He was third in Vezina voting that year. So 2017-2018, he arrives, and there's no more questions since then about whether or not he was going to be the next one. He absolutely is. And 2018-2019, 53 games played, 39 wins. So Tampa Bay, who have had a hard time finding that starter that they can trust, that they can ride through, 5, 6, 7 years, they have it now in Vasilevskiy. They absolutely do. 39 wins, 10 losses in regulation, and 4 in overtime or shootouts. .925 save percentage, which is 6th in the NHL, and he wins the Vezina. And he's a first-team All-Star. But what do we remember from last year? We remember the absolute drubbing they took against Columbus that year. He loses all 4 games he plays in the playoffs with an .856 save percentage. So people who went from, or people who had been only a couple weeks earlier talking about how Tampa could set a wins record in the NHL that season and this team looked unstoppable, 2 weeks later are saying, this team sucks, they're choke artists, they're never going to do anything. And Vasilevskiy was taking his share of jokes as well as some rather unflattering remarks. So famously, for me anyways, was the 2019 awards, Tampa Bay being the butt of every single joke. It felt like every joke, and a lot of them fell flat, but there was still a lot of jokes made about the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now, they were this historic, great team, nobody can stop them, and then they get swept in the first round. Other members of the Lightning were good-natured and chuckled and laughed it off. This guy didn't. Vasilevskiy at no point cracks a smile. Go back and watch that award show. I dare you. It was hard to watch in points. But he was not happy. He was not accepting that they were the butt of jokes. He was not happy at all. So right out of the gate, 2019-2020 feels different for the Tampa Bay Lightning. 52 games, 35 wins, which again leads the league in wins. 14 losses, 3 overtime or shootout losses. .917 save percentage. Over his still young career, 260 games, 159 of them have been wins. 73 regulation losses and 18 losses in overtime or shootouts. His overall save percentage over his career, .919. That's third amongst active goaltenders. 8th in career of goaltenders. Now keep in mind, there's an asterisk you can put next to that. When you are 8th on the all-time list for save percentage, you have to factor in that in the 80s, save percentages were a lot lower, and that there was a time when they didn't really measure save percentage. So it's 8th all-time. He is a really good goaltender. He's 3rd among active goaltenders in career save percentage, and he's full value for it. And here's the thing. So this year they win the Stanley Cup. He's 3rd in Vezina voting with that 35 wins. 25 games in the playoffs, 18 wins, 7 losses, .927 save percentage. You can't pile on him in 2019 when they get swept in the first round and say, well, this just proves they're overrated and Vasi's overrated. And then a year later, when they win the Stanley Cup, say, anybody could have done it. Yeah, he was in net, but anybody could have done it. Because that's not true. 58 games played in his playoff career, 23 wins, 22 losses, .918 save percentage. His save percentage in the playoffs is almost identical to his save percentage in the regular season overall. The 4-game sweep they suffered in 2019, I think, helped Tampa become the champion in 2020. They knew they needed to get tougher, so they went out and they got Gaudreau. They got Coleman as well, and they made that team deeper and a little tougher than they'd been the year before. They played a different style of hockey. Maroon helped them play a different style of hockey. But Vasilevskiy continued to be solid. And along that run to the Stanley Cup, August 11th is that 5 overtime game against Columbus. He saved 61 out of 63 that night. August 17th, he saved 28 out of 29 against Columbus. So while everybody's heaping praise on Korpisalo, and rightfully so, Merzlikins at points during that as well, the fact is that Vasilevskiy's playing really, really well. And then on the 29th of August against Boston, he saves 29 out of 30. He had very good games along the way. And he was consistent, and he didn't miss a single minute. So at a time where we're all saying, well, you got to have 2 goaltenders for this run. You have to have 2 goaltenders for this run. Vasilevskiy proves, no, you don't. Not if you have Andrei Vasilevskiy. September 28th, to clinch the Stanley Cup, he did it in a shutout. 22 shots was all that he faced from the Dallas Stars. And it was his first career shutout in the playoffs. And so we get into this murky area where it's, well, I don't know if he's really that good or the team in front of him is that good. But I've heard it before. I remember the New York Islanders of the early 80s. There was that debate about Billy Smith back then. Well, Billy Smith's pretty tough and he's pretty good, but is he really the best goalie in the league? Really? I don't know. And it sounds kind of silly to say that now because Billy Smith won 4 Stanley Cup rings in a row. But it's a similar storyline with Vasilevskiy. Not that he's going to care. He's got a Vezina. He's got a Stanley Cup. And I would argue that he's a couple of really solid seasons away from already being a guy that we go, yeah, he'll end up in the Hall of Fame. With the rate that he's put up wins, barring losing this season and having a bunch of shortened seasons along the way, he is the one goaltender, Braden Holtby being the other, potentially, who could threaten to jump into the top 3/top 2 of all-time wins. If Tampa Bay can keep this going and keep this together, and Vasilevskiy continues to improve, and I think he's improved every year in his career. I understand the save percentage dropped this year. I still thought it was his best year overall. And as long as he continues to make that ascent, I think he's a shoo-in to win about 450, 500, 600 games. I don't know how many he can end up winning. It's going to depend on, again, schedules and him remaining healthy. But he's only 26. So just think of it this way. You've got Rask and Bishop, who are 33. Let's just say he wins 30 games for the next 7 years. That would take him to 369 career wins. So it's doable, and that's just 30 on average. And over the last 3 years, he's averaged almost 40. So if he averaged almost 40 for 7 years, that's 260, 270. Now you're into the 430 wins category, and he'd only be 33 years of age. He's that good in my eyes. I have a hard time remembering him having a bad game during the entire run they had. There were a couple of games where his save percentage might have been kind of iffy, but I mean, I can think of maybe 1 or 2 bad goals the entire run. He was fantastic. So, again, he will be one of these goaltenders that we have the debate because Tampa's that good. But it's funny how we weren't having that debate a year ago when they got swept in the first round. Now they've won a Stanley Cup. You will get people who want to diminish what he's done. I can't do it because I think he's that good. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Oh, and he does have 3 All-Star games, 2018, 2019, and 2020. So got to make sure. It's on the board. I got to make sure I mention that. Thanks again for all your support. I'll talk to you again soon.